the origins of New South Wales versus Queensland rivalry, the battle between New South Wales and Queensland runs much deeper than anything that happens on the rugby league field. The rivalry is built on years of tension that stretch back to the early days of Australia's federation. From the start, New South Wales was seen as the dominant state, both economically and politically. With Sydney being the biggest city and a major hub for business, media and sport, New South Wales naturally held more power and attention. However, Queensland, with its smaller population and distance from the southern capitals, was often left feeling overlooked, underfunded and unappreciated. That frustration spilled into rugby league very quickly. When the sport began in 1908, both states started building their own competitions, but it didn't take long for Sydney to attract the best talent, not because it had better coaching or a stronger culture, but because it paid more. Most top Queensland players moved south to Sydney clubs so they could make a living from the game. The problem was the moment they signed with a Sydney team, they became eligible for New South Wales under the old residency rule. That meant Queensland was forced to face its own stars wearing blue jerseys every time the interstate series rolled around. From 1908 to 1979, New South Wales dominated the series. Queensland only won a handful of times and the games started to feel like formalities. The passion was still there for the Queensland fans, but it came with a deep sense of injustice. How could you call it a fair fight when your best players were being used against you? Names like Arthur Beetson, John Lang and Kerry Basted all wore the blue jersey at some point, even though their hearts were clearly still in Queensland. By the late 1970s, that frustration reached boiling point. Queensland wanted change. They wanted a series that reflected the true spirit of the rivalry, not one warped by contract rules and club politics. That's when the state of origin idea came to life. In 1980, it was decided that players would no longer be selected based on where they currently played, but instead based on where they played their first senior game of rugby league. It was a bold move, and many doubted whether it would work. But on July 8th, 1980, everything changed. That night, in front of a raucous crowd at Lang Park in Brisbane, Queensland defeated New South Wales 20-10. It wasn't just the scoreline that made headlines, it was the emotion. It was the side of Arthur Beetson, who had played so many times for New South Wales due to the old rules, finally leading his home state onto the field in maroon. At 35, he was past his prime, but none of that mattered. He charged into tackles like a man possessed, threw punches when needed, and showed his teammates what pride really looked like. That first Origin match lit a fire that still burns today. Queensland had their revenge, New South Wales had their wake-up call, and the sport had something completely new. No longer was this just a routine series played out in front of half-empty stadiums. This was war. The players treated it like a final, the fans screamed like it was life or death, and the media followed every second like it was front-page news. Since that night, Origin has grown into the most intense rivalry in rugby league. Every generation adds its own fuel to the fire. Each win, each loss, each controversial call gets etched into the memory of both states. It's no longer just about rugby, it's about who you are, where you come from, and what you stand for. That's why Queenslanders will always bring up 1980 when talking about pride, and that's why New South Wales fans still feel the pressure to prove they're the best, not just the richest. State of Origin didn't just change rugby league, it changed how sport can reflect the deepest divisions, frustrations and passions of a nation. And it all started because Queensland got tired of watching their heroes wear the wrong colours. Players care more than club or world matches. There are few things in rugby league that stir emotion the way State of Origin does. You can win a grand final with your club, you can represent your country on the world stage, but when players talk about their careers, they often point to Origin as the highlight. The reason comes down to one word: passion. At club level, players are part of a system. They have weekly routines, team sponsors, media commitments, and coaching strategies that rarely change. When they represent their country, the pride is there, no doubt. But International Rugby League doesn't always bring the same energy. The matches are spaced out, the rivalries aren't as deeply rooted, and the global fan base isn't as intense. But Origin? That's different. For 3 games a year, the noise, the pressure, and the weight of state expectations come crashing down on every player's shoulders. Players don't just represent a team, they represent their entire home, their family, their community, and their childhood dreams. For many, it's a chance to prove themselves not just as skilled athletes, but as warriors who can handle the most brutal and demanding arena in the game. The emotional build-up is like nothing else. Some players talk about the week leading up to Origin as the hardest part. You're surrounded by cameras, you're reminded of past defeats, you're told what's at stake. It's mentally draining. Some of the toughest men in rugby league have admitted to vomiting before kickoff from sheer nerves, not from fear of injury, but fear of failure. Letting down your state is unthinkable. On the field, Origin demands more, the pace is faster, the hits are harder, the referees allow more physicality, the crowd noise is deafening, and there's no room for second chances. One missed tackle, one bad read, and the whole state knows your name for the wrong reasons. That intensity pushes players beyond their limits. Then there's the hatred. In club games, there's respect. In World Cup games, there's diplomacy, but in Origin, there's real venom. You're often standing opposite a teammate, maybe even a friend, but on Origin night, they become your enemy. There's no hugging after the final whistle. There's no jersey swapping. There's only the scoreboard and the pain of losing. Some of rugby league's greatest players have built their legacies on Origin moments. Jonathan Thurston kicking the winning goal with a busted shoulder, Andrew Johns coming back from injury in 2005 to dominate the entire series, and Paul Gallen refusing to be intimidated by a sea of maroon jerseys. These aren't just highlights, they're moments that define careers. Players know that State of Origin tests everything. Your toughness, your skill, your heart, and your nerve. It's not about money, it's not even about fame, it's about walking off that field and knowing you stood tall when your state needed you most. That's why players care more, because no matter what else they achieve, State of Origin will always be the biggest battle of their lives. Rule differences in Origin versus NRL. State of Origin may follow the official rulebook of Rugby League, but anyone who has ever watched an Origin match knows it's a completely different beast compared to your average NRL game. While the same guidelines apply on paper, the way those rules are enforced on the Origin stage tells a very different story. The difference isn't just technical, it's cultural. Origin isn't just played harder, it's officiated with a totally different mindset, and that shift changes everything. In the NRL, referees are under constant scrutiny. Every tackle, every high shot, every accidental trip is picked apart by the bunker and broadcasted from 10 different angles. The modern game is full of stoppages, set restarts, 6 agains, and heavy punishments for even the slightest hint of foul play. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Player safety has to be protected, but it also slows the game down. The rhythm gets broken, and some of the natural aggression that used to define rugby league has been filtered out. But in State of Origin, something flips. Referees seem to know that fans, players, and coaches want something more primal, something raw. So instead of blowing the whistle for every minor infraction, they let the game flow. Head-high tackles still get penalised if they're blatant, but borderline calls often go unpunished. Holding down in the ruck, late shots, even small scuffles don't automatically trigger penalties or sin bins like they do in the NRL. The general attitude is simple. Let the boys sort it out on the field. That mindset opens the door for something special. It creates a contest where physicality matters more than caution, a place where courage is rewarded and hesitation gets punished. When 2 players line up for a massive collision in an Origin match, they don't pull out at the last second because they're worried about a penalty. They go through with it, and the crowd erupts. The game becomes more intense, more brutal, and more honest. There's also a noticeable difference in the speed of the game. Because there are fewer stoppages and fewer video reviews, Origin matches feel like they move faster, there's barely time to breathe, players don't get the luxury of resets or soft penalties, every second counts, every inch gained is earned, and every tackle takes something out of the body. That kind of relentless pace doesn't just test fitness, it tests the mental toughness of everyone on the field, and then there's the attitude. Players know they're not going to get bailed out. They can't rely on a referee to win them a penalty, so they dig in, they play through pain, they run harder, they get up after being knocked down because quitting just isn't an option. In club games, players sometimes have bad days and coast through. In Origin, coasting gets you flattened. There have been games where players walked off the field bloodied, battered, and bruised, but proud. because they knew they'd survived a war. It's not uncommon to see players play through injuries that would have ruled them out of NRL rounds. Just ask Cameron Smith, who once played through a busted shoulder, or Jonathan Thurston, who kicked a match-winning conversion in 2017 with a torn rotator cuff. The more relaxed approach to officiating doesn't mean dirty play is allowed. In fact, it's the opposite. Players are held accountable by each other, not just the referee. If someone crosses the line, retribution usually comes quickly. Sometimes it's legal, sometimes it's not, but it always happens. That's the hidden code of Origin. You give respect only if it's earned. This unspoken understanding between players and referees gives Origin its edge. It's not about ignoring the rules, it's about understanding the moment, letting the biggest names in the game settle it themselves. That's why Origin hits harder, why it looks sharper, why every tackle feels like it could be the turning point. The refs are part of the show, but they don't control it. And that's exactly how the fans like it. Iconic brawls, moments, and controversies. State of Origin has never just been about the scoreboard. The moments that live longest in the memory often come from the chaos between the whistles. From brawls that shook the stadium to controversial calls that split the nation, Origin is a soap opera in footy boots. And over the decades, it has delivered some of the most dramatic chapters in rugby league history. Start with 1995. That year, Queensland entered the series with a makeshift squad. Their big-name players were banned due to the Super League war. New South Wales, loaded with talent, were expected to steamroll the Maroons. Instead, Queensland stunned them, not just with gutsy play, but with fists. In Game 2, a full-scale brawl broke out that lit up the series. It was raw, it was real, and it reminded everyone that Origin isn't decided on paper. Fast forward to 2009, and Michael Crocker's bone-rattling hit on Brett White became the stuff of legend. It was a legal tackle, but it sent a clear message. Queensland wasn't there to play pretty football, they were there to hurt, and hurt they did. Then came 2013. Paul Gallen, already a legend in blue, took things to another level. After a clash with Nate Miles, he unleashed a flurry of punches straight to Miles's face. The crowd went wild. Commentators lost their minds. Gallen received a warning, but no sin bin. In any NRL match, that would have been a straight send-off. But in Origin, it was just part of the theatre. That moment, controversial as it was, captured the raw emotion of the series. Of course, not all iconic Origin moments are about violence. Some are about brilliance. Billy Slater's 2004 chip and chase try still gets replayed every year. It wasn't just a try, it was magic, a moment of fearless creativity that shifted the momentum of the series. That play helped Queensland win the match, and it helped Slater become a household name overnight. Then there's the 2020 series. COVID-19 restrictions changed the schedule, the squads, and the entire atmosphere. Queensland was written off before the first ball was kicked. They were labelled the worst Maroons team in history by the media, but under Wayne Bennett's leadership, they shocked everyone. They won the series 2-1. The deciding game at Suncorp Stadium wasn't flashy, it was gritty, desperate, and beautiful in its simplicity. The underdog stood tall and the legend of Origin grew even larger, but it hasn't all been glory. Controversies have always followed the Origin trail, from contentious refereeing calls to never-ending eligibility debates. In 2018, Greg Inglis was selected for Queensland, even though he was born in New South Wales. Technically, he qualified through his junior football in Kempsey, which fell under Queensland's development zone, but fans and pundits were divided. Was it fair? Did it break the spirit of the rules? That debate still lingers today. Refereeing decisions have also turned games on their heads. Disallowed tries, missed knock-ons, phantom penalties. Each incident adds fuel to the rivalry. Fans don't forget, every wrong call becomes part of the myth. Every series has its what-if moment, and that's part of the magic. Simply put, State of Origin thrives on moments that are bigger than sport. Whether it's a last-minute try, a punch that shakes the stadium, or a call that splits the nation, Origin has a way of creating unforgettable drama. Not because it tries to, but because it's built for it. It's the one place in rugby league where anything can happen, and usually does. Legends born from Origin. If club football builds a reputation, State of Origin carves it in stone. This is the arena where good players can become unforgettable, where even seasoned pros are pushed to their limit, and where every action on the field can define an entire career. It's not just about what happens during the 80 minutes, it's about what those moments mean. That's why names like Wally Lewis, Darren Lockyer, Billy Slater, and Cameron Smith are not just remembered, they are revered. Wally Lewis, often referred to as the King, didn't earn that nickname by chance. He was the heart and soul of Queensland during the 1980s. His presence on the field was magnetic. He wasn't the flashiest player or the fastest. What he had was raw authority. Every time he touched the ball, you felt something was about to happen. 8 Man of the Match awards in Origin proves that. His leadership turned ordinary squads into warriors. One of his most famous performances came in 1989 when Queensland won Game 2 with just 12 men on the field for most of the match. Lewis played through injury and still outclassed New South Wales. That's the sort of moment that makes people believe in legends. Darren Lockyer continued that legacy through the 1990s and 2000s. Originally a fullback, then a 5'8", Lockyer's ability to adapt and lead through tough situations made him one of the most dependable Origin performers in history. He captained Queensland during the early stages of their 8-year dominance and sealed several series with cool-headed decisions under pressure. His match-winning try in the dying minutes of Game 3 in 2006, after Brett Hodgson's infamous pass went wrong, was a defining moment. That play kick-started a new era and reminded everyone that Lockyer was born for Origin. Then came Billy Slater. If Origin was a stage, Slater was a performer who stole the spotlight every time he stepped on it. His combination of speed, vision, and timing changed how fullbacks played the game. One of his greatest moments came in 2004 with that chip and chase try off a Darren Lockyer pass. It wasn't just a flashy highlight, it was a moment of nerve and genius that showed he had the courage to try something bold when it mattered most. Slater's commitment to Queensland was unmatched. Even in the later stages of his career, his defence, positioning and communication never dropped. He made Queensland stronger just by being on the field. And no conversation about Origin legends is complete without Cameron Smith. The most capped Origin player of all time, Smith wasn't the biggest hitter or flashiest ball runner, but he controlled games like a chess master. He understood the rhythm of Origin better than anyone. His cool head in chaotic moments gave Queensland a sense of stability that their opponents couldn't match. He was the kind of player who could shift the momentum with a smart kick, a sneaky run, or just by talking his team through the fire. But the story of Origin legends is not limited to Queensland. New South Wales has also produced warriors who left everything on the field. Andrew Johns, in 2005, delivered one of the greatest performances in Origin history. Coming back from injury and questions about his fitness, Johns dominated Game 2 with try assists, sharp kicks, and fearless runs. He made Queensland look like spectators. That one night cemented his status as one of the greatest playmakers of all time. Brad Fittler, who later became a winning Origin coach, had a playing career that was all about toughness and leadership. His ability to break tackles, lead with intent, and inspire his teammates made him a go-to man in high-pressure moments. Paul Gallen brought a different kind of fire. His aggressive style, no-nonsense attitude, and refusal to back down gave New South Wales the edge they needed to end Queensland's long-winning run in 2014. Gallen wasn't just playing, he was on a mission. And now there's James Tedesco, whose speed, footwork, and consistency have made him one of the best Origin fullbacks in modern times. His efforts in the 2018 and 2019 series wins for New South Wales proved that the Blues were finally producing match winners of their own again. What all these players have in common is simple. They didn't just play in State of Origin, they lived it. They felt the pressure, took the hits, stood up when it counted, and walked away as legends. And that's why the series matters so much, because Origin isn't just a game, it's where reputations are forged in fire and only the best survive, the cultural divide. The rivalry between Queensland and New South Wales isn't just built on sport, it's rooted in a much deeper divide that stretches back over a century. These two states don't just play differently, they think differently, live differently, and see each other through completely different lenses. That's what makes State of Origin more than a rugby league contest. It's a clash of identities, cultures, and pride. Queenslanders often see themselves as outsiders. For decades, they felt like they were being ignored by the more powerful and polished Sydney establishment. In rugby league, that resentment was fed by the fact that their best players had to leave the state to play in the top competition. Those same players would then be picked to represent New South Wales under residency rules. It felt like a betrayal. That bitterness simmered for years, and when the Origin format finally changed in 1980, the state unleashed all its frustration in one brutal, emotional match. To this day, Queenslanders treat Origin with near religious reverence. It's more than an event, it's a celebration of who they are. Small towns close up early, people wear maroon to school, work and the shops. The air is thick with pride and purpose. There's a collective belief that being underestimated is a badge of honour. They don't want sympathy, they want respect, and they believe Origin is the place to earn it. New South Wales sees things differently. With its larger cities and more media exposure, the state has always been expected to win. That expectation brings its own pressure. The Blues are expected to be dominant, so when they lose, it's not just a sporting failure, it's a crisis. That weight of expectation shapes how fans and players approach the game. New South Wales wants to prove superiority. Queensland wants to prove they belong. That clash creates a dynamic you can feel in every match. Even the venues tell the story. Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane is a living, breathing beast on Origin night. The crowd feels like it's right on top of the players. Every run, every tackle, every decision is met with a deafening roar or a brutal chorus of boos. It's tribal, it's personal. Sydney's Accor Stadium has a more corporate feel. The crowd is larger but often quieter. It's harder to build the same kind of hostile energy. That difference reflects the cultural personalities of the two states. This rivalry also shapes the players. Many Queenslanders grow up hearing stories of being written off by Sydney-based selectors. That chips away at them until they're ready to use it as fuel. New South Wales players, meanwhile, are often reminded of the years they failed to deliver. They know the pressure is real. And that knowledge doesn't fade when they run onto the field. So while the rules might be the same, the meaning is not. Every Origin game is played in the shadow of that divide. And that's why the hits are harder, the celebrations are louder, and the losses hurt more. Because every match is another chapter in a cultural battle that neither state wants to lose. Why the fans say it's more than a game? For many people in Australia, Origin isn't just a sporting event. It's a story passed down through generations. Grandparents remember Wally Lewis. Parents talk about Alfie Langer. Kids now cheer for the likes of Nathan Cleary and Reece Walsh. Entire families are split by state lines. Friendships are paused during Origin week. Pubs are filled with tension, jerseys, and shouting. Workplaces become battlegrounds for banter and bragging rights. The emotional connection is hard to describe unless you've felt it. Fans cry after wins. They scream at the TV during losses. They remember every big moment, every bad call, every last-minute try. It's personal because it feels like it belongs to them. Unlike club matches that involve only a section of the country, Origin touches everyone. Even people who don't follow rugby league get pulled into it. In rural towns, city apartments, coastal suburbs, and outback communities, people gather to watch. It's 3 nights a year where everything stops and all eyes are on that field. Fans see their values reflected in their team. Grit, loyalty, fire, resilience. When Queenslanders say Origin is about heart, they mean it. When New South Wales fans say it's time to restore pride, they believe it. That's why people say it's more than a game, because for a few hours it stops being a sport. It becomes a fight for respect, a reminder of who you are, and a chance to stand tall for where you come from. If you enjoyed this, there's plenty more rugby videos in the works. I would greatly appreciate if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching.